you couldn't just put your pack on. You set it was sitting on the ground, and you sat down and you got your arms in the straps, and then you rolled over onto your hands and knees, and then you set your rifle on the ground and pulled yourself up.
Man.
We'd walk on, there were bamboo, a lot of bamboo over there, and that's where the red ants liked it.
Oh, great.
So we have to go through some bamboo, and if there was a bunch of red ants, they attacked you. They just plain dived on you, and you talk about bite.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just went nuts. The guy went, whenever the guy went nuts, we knew we were next to red ants.
I was actually following the blood sign,
Mm-hmm.
and we probably went 400 meters, and that's when we ran in. And the guy that shot me, to me, was only about 20 feet from me,
Oh.
popped out of a hole. And initially getting shot, I thought I was going to die because I'd seen the people that I'd met in my lifetime float above me, but it was just their faces, though. And to me, they floated, and it was probably seconds, but they floated and floated. Well, my grandmother was up there who just died 30 days roughly prior.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and of course, I'm saying to the Lord, I don't want to go yet, and I got things I want to do, and I always think we made a, if you want to call it a contract or a pact, okay, Sergeant, we're going to let you live, we're going to let you go back to the world, but you got some work to do when you get back.
Them guys were right with me, stayed right with me, and then he finally heard me and hollered back and says, Bose, I'm over here.
So you were conscious the whole time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So you took multiple shots then, or?
yeah, I took a couple through the right side and one through the right leg,
Uh-huh.
but he was a poor shot.
Figured there'd be some humor here with you guys.
Well,
Because when they took him up in that chopper, I knew I would have no idea what happened to him from that point on until somebody from home wrote me a letter.
Yep.
And they did, and he lived.
so you make too much money, you can't use the VA, and I guess when we'd run into our senator or rep in Lyle's with me, I'd tell him the story. This guy saved my life. He carried me 400 meters and lay beside me the whole night.
Mm.
But I said, I can use the VA, but he can't. What's wrong with the system?
I've never thought about those times as much as I do now.
Right.
And and I've got more time to think about it. So, and that's probably lucky that it's now and not back then that it dwelled in my head. But it was the first time I went to the wall that took me down.
Hello, this is Jimbo from the YouTube channel Jimbo, South Dakota, and this is a Hog House Chronicles podcast. And sitting next to me here, I have Gene Murphy and Lyle Bose. They're both Vietnam veterans, friends for decades, and they've done many other interviews, got medals, awards, but they're both extremely humble gentlemen. So we're going to go ahead and just get a start here. And first thing, they are in this book, Vietnam Vets Still Coming Home, and you can search the internet to find a place where you can get a hold of this. It's full of stories of Vietnam vets, different genders, jobs, not jobs, career fields. MOS for on the Army side. Air Force specialty code for me. I'm an Air Force vet. But yes, a friend of mine, Eldon Nygaard, I worked on his helmet. He was brought to me at the Air Guard through another friend. Worked on his helmet. He gave me this book, told me all about it. And then Larry Tenniger, met him through a friend in Alcester, South Dakota. And then he started rattling off names, and of course your two names came up right away. So anyway, very cool book. I'm still going through it, and it's a very good book if you want to get yourself a copy. Anyway, Gene, we're going to go ahead and start with you, and just let us know just as much as you want to about how you grew up, where you grew up, family, and then Lyle take over when he sees fit there, and then you guys met on a bus, and then we're going to listen to you guys reminisce.
And I grew up in White, South Dakota, a small town of only about 400. I grew up with a lot of first cousins. There was actually 64 of us first cousins.
Oh, wow.
And so, played a lot of sports, hunted, fished, camped out. I mean, as a kid growing up, I look back at it, and again, a lot of my cousins I played ball with. A lot of the nice-looking girls were my first cousins, so I couldn't date them. And of course, my father was a World War II vet, and I have 4 brothers and a sister. And out of us 5 boys, 4 of us served during the Vietnam era. Actually, 3 of us went over there. The year that I served in Vietnam, there was 4 of us first cousins. My older brother, Bob, and then Rick Barge, who was a Navy corpsman with the Marines, and Mike Murphy with the Seabees, Navy Seabees. But, this was back in the 60s, so I always look back at that, and, nobody was rich.
Right.
And again, but again, we fished. There was I'm thinking 4 different lakes within 20 miles of the little town of White. So we fished, hunted pheasants, but it was, I guess a super time to grow up, I thought, as I look back at it. And I guess, things were, I guess I feel easier than they are now. So
I think I would agree.
yeah. So
More, maybe even not the word easier, but maybe simpler.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. Maybe those coincide. I don't know.
And we were actually the last class, or my class of 1966 was the last class of White High School, and then they consolidated.
Oh.
Yeah. But again, we played 8-man football, played basketball, track and field. Summer times we played both baseball, softball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was a kid growing up in mid-America that was super, I thought.
Right. Yeah, and I noticed in the book they kind of called you 2 guys out as the Dakotans.
Yeah.
And one of the guys wanted you, but you didn't know why.
Yeah.
So, how about you, Lyle?
Yeah, I grew up on a farm outside of DeSmet, about halfway. If you drew a line from Irwin to DeSmet, I'd be in the middle of the line, and there was 7 of us kids, and we went to country school. My first 6 years of school was in country school. My older siblings went all the way through in country school. It was called the Bow School.
Oh, wow.
And my dad was on the school board the whole time. I never knew him not to be on the school board until they closed the schools.
Mm-hmm.
So then we went into DeSmet and got a different type of education. It was there that my 7th grade that I first thought of Vietnam, or not Vietnam, it was Thailand at the time where the trouble was starting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was concerned my brother would get drafted because he was 10 years older than I was. And I thought, wow, I'm sure glad I'm not old enough to be drafted.
Oh, man.
And,
little did you know.
So, the next thing I know, I'm old enough to be drafted. And he's out of the Army.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, and, I just help my dad every day, 7 days a week, and have to take some days off from school to help the field work and do all that stuff. But just like Gene, I had a bunch of cousins, and we grew up, and we were naughty, Every once in a while, a window would get broke, or somebody get a bloody nose or whatever, but it was just the way we grew up, and it was good. We learned a lot of stuff, By the time we were by the time we were graduated from high school, we had a pretty good idea how the world worked.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, I agree with Gene, it was a better time to grow up. And, you know, as far as easy or hard, you know, there's only 24 hours in a day. And it's the same as there was then. And you're busy, but you're just busy. And today you're busy. You might not be doing as much physical stuff, but it wasn't any harder then. You just did it a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So
Maybe fewer things to choose from to take your time, but each individual still makes the choice on how they use their time.
that's right. And you know, yeah, you didn't get in trouble. You know, I think about back then. You know, it didn't matter whether it was your parents or your aunt and uncle, or the school teacher or the preacher or whatever it is, you got the same message. And it was, you better do the right thing, and you better know what the right thing is.
Mm-hmm.
And now, today, these kids aren't getting the same message. They don't, you know, which message do you believe? But we didn't have a choice in those days.
Right. Yeah.
And so we knew what we should do. Anyway. So anyway, that's my background as far as I started in college, but I didn't want to go to college, and so I quit and volunteered for the draft.
I'm guessing now, is that SDSU, South Dakota State University, or where did
it
you?
was Dakota State.
Dakota State. Okay.
Yeah, they had
right.
just become Dakota State from General Beetle.
Oh, really?
That was named General Beetle.
Oh, wow. There's a lot of history with schools.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And now that school is kind of the number one in the nation for cybersecurity.
Is it really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. I ended up riding on an airplane with the president one day, and I can't remember where we were going, but he was telling me all about it. So that was back in the early days.
Nice. And you did some at SDSU?
Yeah, I did a year at SDSU, and then, of course, stayed out, worked construction that summer, and then worked with Prunning's Construction out of Brookings, and stayed with them until December. And, of course, then I thought, gee, I'm going to try to go back in January, but I better find out from the draft board where I sat. And there were no numbers at that time. And I still remember Ed Smith, one of my friends, just got back from Vietnam, and I'm telling him I got to go to Brookings and telling him, you know, to find out where I was at in the draft. And he said, I don't think that's a good idea. He said, I'd stay away from them.
No news is good news, right?
Yeah. And so he went down with me, and we went in there, and I'm, again, just talking to some young lady and gave him my name, and she said, I'll be right back. And she went back in a different room and came back and said, you'll be getting a letter tomorrow, which I did.
So was that letter already, and she just found out about it, or did they craft it in the back room and pop it in the mail that day?
Yeah, I guess I really don't know, but I think they probably crafted it that day and said, we got a hot one here. We're going to, yeah. And so, and that was, probably late December. I mean, like 20th or something like that. And we were going in, got orders to go in and report down here first part of January.
So at this point, you two gentlemen didn't know each other.
No.
No, it was, I'd only been to White once in my life. And that's a funny story. So my brother was playing football. He was a senior, I think. And they couldn't win a game to save their soul, and they couldn't even make a touchdown, and so all of a sudden our running back got loose, and he's running and he's making a touchdown, and then the whistle blew, and so he stopped and went back and everything, and it was an inadvertent whistle.
Oh, no. So he didn't cross the line.
So he never got the touchdown, you know.
Oh, my word.
We've been waiting for game after game, you know.
Was that in white, though?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's the only
okay.
time I'd been in white.
Inadvertent whistle, only touchdown, and who knows how long.
That's the way I remember it anyway. So I'd have been
Man.
about 7 at that time.
Wow. Yeah, nowadays you watching ball, it's like you hear 'em not just one whistle, but tons of whistles, you know, before they'll stop, because some of them have learned that lesson, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway.
So you guys met on the bus on the way to where? Let's go ahead and get into how you guys met.
Oh, we were in
and how it
Brookings,
went.
and I was already on the bus, and we were headed to Sioux Falls for the induction center, but they'd always bring you in. We were coming down the night before.
Okay.
And yeah. And the last seat when Lyle got on was sitting by me, I guess.
Yeah, I'd changed buses in Brookings.
Uh-huh.
So I was the last guy on the bus, and then we sat down, and there we were. Where are you going? Well, we're both going to the same place.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to Sioux Falls. And then I don't even remember much, you know, as far as why we, you know, I suppose we had to, they probably fed us supper, you know, somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, and then of course I went out and partied. I had another friend that was getting there, so I went out and partied all night long, and they couldn't get me up the next morning because I couldn't get me awake. And so I was late. We were supposed to be at the induction center at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was late. And so they were mad at me and my buddy. And so he grumbled this I think he was E8 or something, you know. He says, you know, 10 more minutes and you'd have been draft delinquent. And I said, well, what you going to do then? Send me to Vietnam? And, you know, and of course, then they tried to find details for me all day or something, you know. But
And an E8 being second from the top
Yeah.
in the enlisted ranks.
I don't
E9's as
really-
high as they go.
So anyway, that was my introduction into the. Of course, then it wasn't long. We went and take our oath. And
That afternoon took the oath, and then that late afternoon, evening, we flew to Seattle or SeaTac to Fort Lewis. You know, and I guess as I look back, I'm thinking we'd spend more time in Sioux Falls, and boom, we were gone. I mean, and we got into SeaTac late, and then they bussed us up to Fort Lewis. Yeah, and I still remember the 2 drill sergeants. I thought they were a little crazy with the Smokey the Bear hats on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they were yelling. And and to me, you know, get off my bus, and you know, yeah.
Yeah. So then, how did it progress from there? You guys, did you have the same MOS and the same training and everything?
well, we had to go fill out papers for about 4 days. We had to fill out papers, and they took tested us and everything, sorting us out and see what we'd be good at, and then asked us what we wanted to do, and we're sitting there talking, and we're quite clever, because if you get in infantry, you make rank fast, and if you go to Vietnam, you make rank fast. So we volunteered for both those things together, you know. So that was, I always think that's probably part of the reasons why after that all our orders came down together. I mean, we were always on the same set of orders. And so we went to basic together. He was the weapons guy that got him in, and I was a squad leader. Went to advanced individual training. It was mortars, 11 Charlie. And so he slept on the top bunk and I slept on the bottom bunk, and, you know, we went through training and we were just there every day.
Mm-hmm. And then I was doing a little review. I didn't have as much time as I hoped I would to review, but they actually, when you got into Vietnam, you're actually in an infantry unit, but you didn't really get trained much in infantry. It was more the mortar.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing where I think we only shot that rifle, a couple hours. And I mean, we got to Vietnam where we go into Cameron Bay, and I think there's 3 different placements where they send the troops in, and you're just a replacement there. So we're waiting at Cameron Bay, and I'm thinking probably 2.5 days when our names came up on the board, 4th Infantry. But then I'm still thinking we're going to be at a base camp fire support base, even if we go to the 4th Infantry. We're trained as mortarmen, and we get up there, and I'm thinking it was an E7 said, "Welcome to Vietnam," and there was at least 25 of us. You're all infantry. I mean, of course, I raised my hand and told him there was a hell of a mistake here, and I said, his name is Bose, and I'm Murphy, and I said, we're 11 Charlie. I said, we don't know shit about this infantry. I said, you've got to correct this error, and he came right back, which don't worry, young fella. So I'm in my mind, I'm thinking he's going to correct it, but then the next words, you're going to learn real quick.
Yeah.
And Lyle leaned over and he said, I think we're in deep shit here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think that phrase came out of your mouth more than one time with the way it sounded in the book there. But this is not going to be a good deal.
Yeah, well, and then you had in Vietnam, I think we were there, I'm thinking 3-4 days in the rear, because the 4th ID trained you, so you've been there a week before you really go out to the bush, but
right.
Yeah, but even in our training, we went out on I guess I call it a patrol, and I thought the old guys were crazy, because they were drinking. As we went through one village, they threw smoke grenades, I mean, that I can remember, but,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. But the thing I will say, I didn't say it at the beginning, is we're at the DAV in Sioux Falls, and we're in the office, Marty's office.
Yeah.
So they have people out here. It sounds like they're running the vacuum now and stuff. So, but it sounds like it stopped now. But anyway, that's where we're at. And so there's times where I go to different places and do this, and sometimes they come to my place. But I told you I'd come up here and do it. So. But yeah, it's a nice office here.
Yeah.
And, yep. Limited on backdrop here though, so we got you behind a blank wall, and you got both wood backgrounds here and stuff. So, but so go ahead and just continue from there. And
well,
how did it
and then
progress?
We and I guess we can tell that story when they were going to ship us out the next morning. They woke us up, and to me, we were in tents sleeping on army cots. But all of a sudden, a siren sounded, and of course, we didn't really know what the hell that was for. And all of a sudden, they're saying, "Wake up! We're getting mortared." And of course, and I grabbed my boots and my pants, and we took off. And the bunker to me was like a half a block down, and so I'm running, but there's a guy way ahead of us, I'm thinking just boxer shorts. It looked like. And it was Lyle. and I got in the bunker and said, "Where in the hell's your boots and your pants?" He said, I left them back in that tent. He said, when they said mortars, I'm thinking, hey, get in the bunker, get under cover.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the only race I ever won in my life. I mean, that's, you wake up and we could hear the mortars hitting. And they were a long ways away, but that didn't matter. I mean, we were scared, and we got in that bunker as quick as we could. Now, to give you a different version, when I come in out of the field to go home, we were sleeping in the bunker, and the sirens went off, and you could hear the mortars real well, but I didn't get up because that wasn't very close at all. And so made me get up to say. This time they told me, you better get in that bunker. So I walked out in the bunker, and I looked at the sergeant, and I says, "Now are you happy?" And he says, "Yep." And I says, "Good, because I'm going back to bed."
You had a calibrated ear by that time.
Yeah, we it was just a whole different world. It was just a whole different world. I mean, we were scared to death, and then here I am just about to go home, and there was no fear at all.
Mm-hmm.
Was
it 2 years that you guys were there, or just under 2 years?
We had a 12-month tour.
A 12-month tour, okay.
Yeah, the Army guys had 12 months, and later I found out the Marines had 13 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell the Marines, you guys had 13 months because you were slow learners. And that probably doesn't go over real good with them.
Oh, there's always banter between the services and
Yeah.
stuff, and we'll all salute the same, but you got to have a little fun,
Yeah.
in between there. So, but so what was it like when you got off the airplane in country?
Well, that number one, that was our second flight. We'd been on an airplane, and we got on, and they opened that door, and as soon as they opened that door, the humidity and the heat come into that plane. And I was Cameron Bay, and so we went out, and of course, the further you got out the door, the hotter it got, and it was dark. It was at nighttime, and there was these Jeeps running around there with 50 cals mounted on them, and they rushed us over and got us in a bus, and all the windows were covered with like 1-inch screen steel mesh, like 1/4-inch mesh, and that was on there so you couldn't throw a grenade in, or it was. So here we are. We got standing there looking around at 50 caliber machine guns and screens on our windows, and then we get on the bus, and you look up and say, "Caution, Vietnam could be hazardous to your health."
I'm sure.
And that was it right there in the first 10 minutes. And then, of course, we were headed to the replacement compound where, but it was, hot. I don't know how hot it would have been that day, but I'll bet it was between 90 and 100.
Oh yeah, especially if it's that warm at night when you get there and
Yep.
after dark and it hits you that bad.
So they got us, and we're filling sandbags and doing all this stuff. They're giving us, and we're waiting for our names to come down the pike, And like Gene said, for sure we're going to get split up this time.
Yeah, because we figured, hey, we're just replacements.
Right.
And then, but of course, we ended up going to church service twice because I told Lyle, let's stay away from that barracks because they put us on a detail, and So I mean, I look back at it, and then I always thought they gave us like cookies and pop at them church services.
I don't know.
And that was, and we figured, hey, we'll go our separate ways now, and I'm still thinking we're gonna be at a fire base or fire support base because we're not trained infantry.
Right.
Yeah. And then, of course, when we get up to the 4th ID, that E7 said, you're all infantry. And, within probably less than a week, we were in the bush, and of course, I heard my first squad leader, Barney Kahn, saying, I want both them boys from Dakota. He had that southern accent. And I'm thinking, why does he want both of us? He's going to put us on a bad detail.
Yeah.
Because we're from, and I went to his squad, and that was one of the first questions. I said, why do you want both of us? He said, you boys are from Dakota. I don't have to tell you nothing. Everything's done, he said.
Right.
Yeah. And he was a short timer. I think I'm thinking he was already in his 10th or 11th month.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys had just come out of the Tet Offensive.
Okay.
The 68 Tet Offensive, which was the big change in the war.
Yeah.
And so they were pretty hardened warriors, and they were quiet. You know, they didn't have a lot to say, and it was just a day-to-day deal. I mean, that was my first impression is, you know, these guys been seeing some stuff.
Yeah.
And so, but you got to start, you know, they start putting you on the detail, LP, listening post,
Yeah.
out there by yourself, 3 of you out there by yourself.
So did they end up splitting up you guys then? Or how did that work?
Well, I mean, we were in the same company or charter company.
Okay.
First at the 12th, 4th ID. I went to 3rd Platoon. Lyle went to 2nd Platoon. You know, so I mean, but we'd see each other. You know, and my impression when we first got there, I'm thinking after a week, gee, they got to send us back, you know, within the next week to that big base camp. You know, and so I was asking Barney, when do we get to go back to that, you know, they call it Campanari? And I said, they got hot food. I said, cold beer, cold milk even. And he said, boy, I've been here 9.5, 10 months, haven't seen that at all.
Oh, geez.
And that's what I thought. I thought, oh, I said, are you kidding me? No, he said, I'm serious, you know. And then, of course, when now I look back, and I think I was maybe 2 weeks in the bush, he said, Murph, you're going with Lovelace on a 4-man LRP. And I said, okay, 4 men, you know, what the hell's a LRP? He said, long-range reconnaissance patrol, like recon. And I said, well, and then I'm thinking, because there's only 4 of you, I said, you just go out in the morning and come back towards the evening? Oh, hell no, boy, you're going at least 4 days. And I said, with just 4 guys, don't worry. Lovelace is going to break you in.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and then... Yeah,
How not to get caught.
Yeah, well, and then you're thinking, what did we get into?
Because that was 4 days and 3 nights that you were out. How often did they send you out like that? And was that like your first, like your whole time over in Vietnam, you did that? Or was that like the first couple months?
To me, we set up on a hill and run, I call 6, 8 of them patrols out or recon. To me, looking for I call them the little people or the North Vietnamese. You know, that was my take on it.
Well, you know, there was always one going out there from each platoon, or maybe 2. And you'd go out, one would come in and the next one would be loaded up and go out and replace them. And what most of our missions was to go out and get to this point, usually on a trail, and then we were supposed to sit there and listen so you go out and sit for 3 days in this spot in the middle of the jungle, 4 of you.
Man.
And, you know, and quite often you never seen anything or whatever, but then the next thing you know, you're hearing them and and you cannot. You know, the last thing you want to do is open up on them or anything, because there's only 4 of you. Right. How many is there? So it was a search and just a seek and see what you can find deal. And very seldom did we make contact on that. Gene made contact one time. He ran into a guy.
Run into about 35 of them.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was quick. I mean, we broke contact right away. You know, scared. I mean, we were scared. I mean, because you could see them. Yeah, and
so you're able to skedaddle before they saw you?
we emptied one, or I emptied one magazine, and we were gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, then they came out and I guess they came out and went through that area. The whole platoon did, and all they found blood signs, but didn't find. I mean, but it scared us. There was other ones. There was other patrols that made contact, but again, you'd want to break it right away because there's only 4 of you,
right?
And you're scared. I mean, and I kind of liked the patrols at last because I could pick, as a sergeant, or a spec 4 and then a sergeant, I could pick the 3 other guys that are going with me. Yeah, because there was a few of them guys that, and that was Tuttle. I always thought, was he with the enemy? Yeah, because I mean, he just, and the guy, I mean, he would fall asleep on guard duty, and fall asleep on listening post at night, and
Wow.
yeah. So I mean, bad news. I mean,
You weren't able to relax even for a few minutes and get a little bit of shut eye with a guy like that
well,
next to you.
and the thing is, I mean, you didn't get a lot of sleep. I mean, I know Lyle's mentioned you'd stand guard twice a night, you know, and there was usually 3 to 4 guys to each bunker, you know, and your bunker was in a circle. There was no front line. I mean, yeah, looking back, and I mean, and you worked. I mean, you humped all day. You were carrying 75 plus pounds on your back. You know, I mean, I look back at it, and you were young.
Right.
I mean, most of the guys were 18, 19, 20, you know, and I remember I had a guy, Cruz, who was 24, and we called him Grandpa.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, so I mean, yeah, then I guess I look at Vietnam, and I look at, you know, to me it was hilly, mountainous country in the Central Highlands, you know, and we only got back like twice to our big base camp, you know. I mean, it was yeah, because I mean, you come back and talk to different Vietnam vets here, and they said, well, you know, we spent the whole year in Saigon, and they put us up in a hotel.
Oh man.
And I'm thinking, were we really in the same war?
Right.
Yeah.
Man.
I mean, yeah, and again,
It was tough. It was really tough every day, unless for some reason, because you were either moving in a 4-man patrol, or you were moving in a platoon, or you were moving with the company. And he's a little short on the weight of that, what you were carrying, because, you know, you'd get 3 days meals you'd have to put on your back, you know, 3/4 of a case of sea rations, and then a gallon of water, or a gallon and a half of water, and that's 12 pounds. And then your M60 machine gun ammo was 25 pounds, you know, and it just added up, and it was heavy, and you know, you couldn't just put your pack on. You it was sitting on the ground, and you sat down and you got your arms in the straps, and then you rolled over onto your hands and knees, and then you set your rifle on the ground and pulled yourself up.
Man.
That's how you got up with the full pack on.
Yep. So there was no standing upright.
No.
You're
you
leaning
didn't just
forward
get up.
almost 40, but even walking, you're bent over, probably getting that center of gravity.
All the time. And we wore towels around our neck and under the straps to try to spread it, so because it just cut into your shoulders, grind on your skin all the time. And then every once in a while, we'd walk on. There were a lot of bamboo over there, and that's where the red ants liked it.
Oh, great.
So we have to go through some bamboo, and if there was a bunch of red ants, they attacked you. They just plain dived on you, and you talk about bite. I mean, you just went nuts. The guy went, whenever the guy went nuts, we knew we were next to red ants.
So with your 12 months there, what month did you start when you
June.
first got there? June?
We got there in June.
Okay. And I didn't look it up.
Of
but
68.
June of 68.
Yeah.
I didn't look it up, but when did the monsoon months hit, and how many are there?
Well,
Remember?
They either talk the dry season or the wet season.
So it's almost half and half.
Yeah, you know, you move into it, and it's, you know, there's no set times or whatever. But I think we got there in the wet season, and then towards winter it became dry, and
Okay.
but you were wet all the time. It didn't matter whether it was raining or not, because you were sweating.
Right.
You were soaking wet. Your feet, I can't believe that our feet didn't cause us more problems, because our feet were wet. We didn't have any socks. We didn't have any underwear. We just had a boot and a pair of pants and a shirt.
Yeah.
That's all we
Because you were
had.
talking about the rot, jungle rot and
Yeah.
stuff. Guys were having issues with that. And
Yeah, because I mean, I had issues both legs and feet, and and they were actually took me off the 4-man lerps, trying to keep my feet and legs dry, and they weren't clearing it up, and to me they formed a scab and kept eating away underneath, and I know Lyle said, we got to do something here, and so he says, I got iodine, we're going to rip all them scabs off and pour iodine, and I mean, it cured it, but it hurt. I mean, he did that.
Come here, friend.
Yeah.
Glug, glug.
Yeah,
I'm thinking, what's he doing? I mean,
I had a 6-inch Gerber knife. We all had knives. We had them sent from home because you needed a tool.
Right.
And I had a 6-inch Gerber knife, and so I took the old match and sterilized it.
Oh, my word.
Tied in on his legs were getting bad.
Right.
Them things were getting bad, and before we even got over there, you hear stories about people dying of jungle rot.
Right.
And so I think how that kind of happens probably is if once it just kind of bores down in a cone deal, and it keeps a little, it's pussy scab.
Right.
And so I could just see that if he waited too long, sooner or later, it's going to hit his bloodstream, and that's it. And so I had this iodine, and I knew it was going to hurt, but I didn't. A little pain is a lot better than dying.
Right. What was worse, pulling the scabs or putting the iodine on?
iodine.
Iodine was the worst.
Yeah.
Okay.
It did.
But they dried up
Yeah.
right away. They dried up, and it was the end of it.
Yeah.
Did they ever train you guys on that stuff or
No, you couldn't
any
cure.
medical stuff?
You couldn't cure
Right.
jungle rot. There was no cure for that. That's all we knew.
Yeah. And in the book, is also mentioned about rats and snakes. And I interviewed my uncle, was a Vietnam vet. He left the Air Force, went to the Army, and he got 2 tours in Vietnam out of that deal. And, I asked him, Uncle Glenn, why'd you do that? You usually hear about going the other way. And he says, I got tired of everybody telling me what to do and how to do it. He says, I went to where they told me what to get done, and I got it done. But he got 2 tours in Vietnam on that. But the rats and the snakes in the monsoon, when the wet season was there, everything went to high ground. And I think maybe in your portion in the book here, you mentioned, rats crawling over you a couple times and stuff. And did you ever have that when you're trying to sleep?
Well, I never had a rat get on me. But we'd have this one time we had a spot on our patrols, and it was out there a long ways, and it was scary. And so 2 patrols would meet up out there. So they had 8 guys out there. And, of course, they all had sea rations, and, of course, they had a sump hole, and they'd throw the cans in the sump hole. Well, then at night, the rats would come and rumble through the tin cans, so you had them, and, of course, that's not a good deal because that's tells you, it gives away your position, too, and everything. But one time, we sat down to take a break, and we looked up, and there was like a 25-foot python hanging in a tree right above our heads. Now what do we do?
Was that the one in your story that said it was like almost 10, 12 inches in girth?
It was a big snake, boy. We noticed that one. And what are you going to do with that one? Well, I don't think we did anything. My buddy says he thinks we shot it, but I don't think we wanted to shoot anything because give it away. But he never dropped down. Mm-hmm. But I've seen a big snake, but in the monkeys would throw stuff at us, they'd be around once in a while and they'd throw twigs or something at you, they didn't, I don't know why, but
just
they're
being
monkeys.
Yeah. Were they like the smaller type monkeys?
Yeah, they were probably 1.5 foot or something in their bodies,
Right.
But you didn't see them a lot, but they were around on occasion. Mm-hmm. But the snakes, it's the leeches. The leeches, the one time we went into a wet LZ, and it was hot, and so we're going in there, and I'm sitting there waiting for them to set this chopper down on this grass, and they just shoved me out. This grass was elephant grass, and I got all tangled. My feet got all tangled up in it, and I went right to my knees, and I was totally underwater.
Oh, geez.
And so I got up. I was thinking, boy, they weren't kidding about wet. And so I got up, and I turned around and look, and here's this steel pot sticking out of the water behind me. My buddy, he was 5'1.5" tall, and so I grabbed him and pulled him up out of the water, and he was mad because he wasn't going to get out of that chopper because he knew he couldn't get out of that chopper and breathe.
Oh, man.
And they shoved him out too. And so then we went to the shore, got him to the shore. Me and another guy, one of my other buddies, got him. We're in there, and here we all are with our pants down, burning leeches off.
Oh, man.
Because we all got covered with leeches.
And that could have been $1 million picture.
Yeah.
Because when I looked up, all I could see is white behinds. I mean, and there was at least 50, if not more.
Oh, man.
And I'm thinking, whoa.
But we had just jumped into that over 5 feet of water, and we had matches to light cigarettes to burn them leeches off. We were pretty efficient.
Were they sealed in plastic and stuff, or
we had
up
our
stored in your
cigarettes
helmet?
in a plastic container and
Yep.
matches in there. But it always
Important
amazed
stuff.
me. We always had matches.
But you were mentioning the rats, and I'm thinking they're as big as a cat.
Oh, yeah.
Because the one night, and that was around the battle in February where we went 8 days where we fought them, and they bought out mosquito nets and air mattresses because I still got the picture, and I knew there was rats on this hill, and so I actually put the mosquito net up between two trees, but I put dirt around it so nothing could get in there.
Right.
And I came off guard duty and no sooner laid down and I had the biggest rat
Oh, geez.
right on my chest. And then Sanchez, kid from Puerto Rico, he said, and I yelled, "Damn rat!" And he said, "Me shoot the rat, Murphy, shoot the rat." And I said, "Hey, I'm in here with the rat. Don't shoot." I said,
my word.
yeah. And then I had a couple times I had them crawl across my legs.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Man.
But then
And
we were
those
talking-
body can be this long, and their tail's just as long,
yeah,
dragging
they were
behind
just-
them. And
yeah. And then we were talking about snakes they had, and I called it a step and a half with a green viper. And to me, they were like maybe 12 inches. Well, and they scared me right at first because I actually brushed them away with the stock of my rifle, but they never told me until like probably 6 months that they had to bite you in a soft tissue, the neck area, the groin area. Well, gee, I said, why didn't you tell me that? You've scared the living crap out of me, but you never told me that.
really, so if they bit you in the calf, it's stronger muscle, but you'd get sick, but wouldn't kill you or something?
No, it wouldn't kill. I mean, that's the way they told me. But I mean, yeah, but you were scared because I remember brushing them away with the stock of my rifle.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, and there was little deer one time because we were out on a 4-man LRP team, and I had 2 new guys with me, so I'm really getting under the undergrowth. And because the one new guy said, "Well, why are you making us, crawl under this, Murph?" And I said, "Because if you guys fall asleep on me, I hope I wake up before they slit my throat." just as I went off, and there was one more guy on guard duty because I just went off, and all of a sudden he's hitting me, and it sounded just like somebody walking up on us. The twigs were cracking, and of course we got the other 2 guys awake, and I'm telling them we're going to blow the Claymore mines. And here was, you could just see the little deer. But scared the crap out of us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So before you went over there, did you get any like jungle survival training or anything like that beforehand?
Yeah, that's escape and evasion training.
Okay.
And so they showed us how to skin a rabbit with bare hands, and do all that stuff or whatever. But
So is that like a few day course before you were in country, or how long?
no,
was
that was part of our training.
But it wasn't that long. I mean,
It
it was maybe a
day or so.
yeah.
You know, it wasn't a big deal, but it. You know what? There was one time when we got so hungry, we were cordoning a village and surrounding it and searching it, and we hadn't had food for a day or two.
Oh, wow.
And so we're hungry because we don't eat much anyway because there isn't much. And so the next thing I know is these guys they're throwing a knife at a little pig in this village. Well, these people, you know, this is their food.
Right.
I mean, when you're messing with that, you're messing with their livelihood. So they're shooting a crossbow at us. It sounded just like a rifle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we got a chicken, and I tried grilling or barbecuing the chicken or whatever you want to call it with bamboo. Well, there was no meat on that chicken. It was so skinny. And then the bamboo, all it do is burn it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that didn't work out at all. And then this guy come running over, and he says, "Bose, I got a calf." I said, "What?" He says, "I got a calf." "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, this calf was sleeping. I found this pipe, and I hit him with a pipe, and should I kill him?" And, of course, that was a big deal
Right.
over there. And I said, "You better go check with the lieutenant and see if he wants us to kill that calf or not."
Mm-hmm.
And he did, and he come back, "Oh, yeah, kill it." Well, by that time, the calf had come to and was gone.
Oh.
I was kind of glad of that. I didn't want to get,
Yeah.
you know, that's not only the trouble that you could get in for doing that, but
Right.
can you imagine trying to cook a cow out there in the
Yeah.
jungle?
Especially when you're on the move all the time, too.
Yeah, we left there, you know, that afternoon probably.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, it was something all the time. It was something all the time. We all lost weight. We all, you know, you didn't drink much water because you didn't know where the next source was going to be at.
Mm-hmm.
So you were really pretty much dehydrated, I suppose, all the time, besides all the sweating. And
Right. Yeah, I'm sure you were.
Because I know my weight went from 165 to 135 in that, 10 and a half months.
Mm-hmm.
And yours probably went
yeah, I lost 20 pounds.
20, yeah.
We weren't fat when we went there.
Oh, I'm sure not.
And it was mainly, sea rations, and like Lyle said, you'd get 12 meals, and I mean, and hopefully every third or fourth day they'd try to resupply us. You'd wear clothes at least 30 days,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd only have the one set that you had on. And I mean, it was, and you could never get socks and nobody wore shorts because it was so hot.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the socks thing surprised me, what you were talking about,
Yeah.
because always, you always hear they talk about, change your socks, keep your feet dry. Well, you couldn't keep them dry, but not having socks in the first place, that surprised me because I would think just the blister factor would just be so huge, and they can get just as infected.
Yeah.
So I was out on a patrol one time, and comes over the radio, "Is code name Bose out there?" "Yeah, this is code name Bose." I was patrol leader. And he says, "What did you ride home for?" "What do you mean?" "Well, you rode home for something." And I said, "Pair of socks?" He says, "A pair of socks?" "Yeah," I says, that's all I can think of. Well, my brother's mother-in-law found out that I had asked I didn't have socks,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed socks, and so she had called George McGovern. And so McGovern was doing his checking it out or whatever, and I never did hear. I never did hear anything back but yeah, I was out on patrol and they asked me but I still didn't have any socks. You know, I think I got a few in a package one time, but I mean,
And my dad would actually send me, and he had to, because they were green socks, so he had to come down probably here to the Army surplus store, and he'd send us like 6 pair. Or, yeah, and I'd put a new pair on, keep a pair, and give the other 4 to my guys. Yeah, but you look back, I mean,
That's some rough times.
well, and again, I mean, to get clothes roughly every 30 days, you know, and I guess I remember washing, you know, your pants in a stream, you know, or your jungle fatigue shirt. But,
So would they replace your uniform after 30 days?
well, they'd give you the clean ones.
Just clean ones, yeah.
Yeah, they'd bring out and they'd dump them
bag
in bags.
bags,
You know,
they'd throw them out.
throw
you
them
know.
out.
You-
And then
'cause-
you'd go up and hopefully you could get one that would fit you.
So there's no rank insignia on them or any of that kind of stuff. It's all
yeah.
just
We never wore any rank or any
sanitized.
name tag.
And they're
Yep.
half wore out. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it just one time, our clothes rotted off us
oh wow.
because they didn't bring any, and I do have pictures of us sitting there with, you know, our, but the thing of it is your pants were bloused at the top. You know, I had a string in there that you
Right.
tied around. Well, when the sewing rotted out on the seam, then they had a big hole in the side of your pants, and the brush you were going through would get in that hole and funnel it right into your boot.
Into your boots.
And then you're walking on junk in your boot. So you had to cut the pant leg off so you weren't walking on trash in your boot, because that didn't work at all.
No. Man. So these patrols that you were doing, is that what you did the whole time you were there?
Well, you'd had different things from the 4-man lerp, night ambushes. Usually a squad or a 10, 12-man unit would go out and search and destroy missions, you know, and that might be the whole company. And then, you know, as the company moved through the jungle, you'd always move through in 3 files. And then I call them the guinea pigs. You'd have a 5 to a 7-man guinea pig. They'd be up here probably 100 to 200 meters ahead of the 3 files. So if they hit, I guess, the enemy, we form a circle right away. And then in the middle file was the captain, the head medic, head RTO, and might even be your lieutenants,
Right.
you know. But I mean, yeah, so I mean, you'd move that way, but I mean, and to me, so hilly, and then, you know, so thick the jungle at times, where I've seen it where guys would actually, you couldn't even cut it with a machete. You'd fall down and take 2 steps and fall down again on it to move. I mean,
Can't
yeah.
cover much ground that way.
No, I mean,
Hard work.
Yes.
yeah,
With
Absolutely.
a pack on your back.
yeah. When, I mean,
Catching on everything behind your head as
Yeah.
well, because
Yeah,
you're
with-
bending over to
you
get
know,
through stuff.
Well, and they'd have them wait a minute vines,
Yeah.
you know, where they'd catch in. I mean, it was. I mean, I guess, you know, as you look back at it, you think, you know, I always think the government, if they're going to put us infantry, why didn't they train us infantry? But why didn't they train us? We worked like where we were mountain yard villagers. Well, why didn't they, train us in that culture? Because, I mean, I remember the first time, you know, the men were just wearing a loincloth and the women just a skirt. And the first time I seen them, I'm thinking, whoa, what is this? You know, and they had, you know, pigs, chickens, water buffalo. They had, you know, plant corn, you know, and probably rice. But I mean, yeah, just
Pretty meager living.
Oh yeah, you look. I mean, I guess, you know, it is something. I mean, but again, I always think, you know, after 2 weeks, why didn't we go back to that big base camp? And I think, and I know both of us only got in twice to Camp Anari, and we were out. I'm thinking the first time 4 months, 5 months, something like that, before they brought the whole battalion in. You know, and then they had big army tents with army cots in them and hot food, and then they had the big round tanks full of beer and pop.
So you two were able to be at that camp at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
Yeah, our company went in, the battalion went in, so your company went in. But
Right.
no, we didn't see each other all that much, because you had your patrols and he had his patrols, and he was on the other side. He's got to dig his bunker. I got to dig my bunker. We got to put out our trip flares. We got to put out our claymore mines, So you were busy.
Yeah.
You weren't running back and forth chatting.
Right. Oh yeah, I'm sure not.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about point, you knew a guy that liked to volunteer for that or something.
Yeah.
I think you said in the book.
Gary Grubbs, or he
Gary?
was. Yeah, he was out of California, and boy, I'd come back and say, this is what the lieutenant says we're doing today, and our squad's on point, and I need a point. Either I need a point guy, or I'm gonna pick a point guy. And he said, "You're walking second man, Murph." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'll walk point for you."
Huh.
Yeah, and we ended up losing him. He got hit February 6th. We were in a battle. Matter of fact, my squad jumped into a big bomb crater, and Robillard was the guinea pigs. He was, I think, was 7 men up, and we were moving, and he hit it. And I still remember the captain. He called back in. He said, "We got steps dug into the side of the hill." And it was either the captain or lieutenant came back and said, "We got to go up them." And Robillard come back and said, "I don't think that's a real good idea."
Mm-hmm.
And he went up him, and he lost his whole squad that day.
Oh wow.
And he's yelling in the horn because when the shooting started, we jumped into a bomb crater on the left flank, and I'm pretty safe. And all of a sudden, I could hear on the radio, "I need help. All my guys are down." So my RTO said, "Murph, I said, "We're going up. Need 2 volunteers." And Grubbs and Vargas volunteered to go with me, and they both got wounded that day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was setting this up,
And
I heard you saying something about the February 6th battle out here
Yeah.
with some of the guys you were
Yeah.
talking with. So
and I look at that, and and I thought he had gone home, and I got hit April 20th, and I'm thinking it was probably 3-4 days later he showed up in the 71st Evac Hospital, and of course I'm saying, "Grubbs, what the hell are you doing?" He said, "Sergeant, I knew you'd need my butt back here." So
man.
he said, "I volunteered," and I said, "Don't go back to the bush." I said, "They're getting the hell shot out of him." He said, "I'm going in the morning," and it was and that would say April 24th, 25th. Well, he was killed May 27th, and Lyle actually tried to patch him up.
Oh, he dropped right at my feet too.
Yeah.
Artillery.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd just been visiting, and here it come, and I hit the ground, and he didn't. We were keeping the wounded there at that point, but anyway, Grubbs got the first round, got him. It was friendly fire.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was friendly fire. They pumped about, a battery is 4 guns, and they pumped, I think, three volleys
Man.
on us, and he got her the first. Well, I had a stack of them. I had 7 wounded and 1 dead. When I got him stopped, I got on the radio and I got him stopped.
Man.
But he hasn't told the story because he had to, and I don't know how many steps you could take before he had to dive again, before the next volley come in.
Yeah,
And the new lieutenant froze. So he
I
actually.
seen the lieutenant. I didn't know we were separated from the main part of the company. Cut an LZ for wounded, for whatever. The battalion commander came out through there with the XO, and he ended up getting killed. And but anyway, all of us. And then our CO got wounded, so they pulled him out and sent another CO up there. And so he didn't know he couldn't have known where we were or whatever. But anyway, he called artillery, and he hit a spot on tree bursts. And So the lieutenant, I looked over at the lieutenant. He was a new lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know him. This was a different platoon. I was all of a sudden with the 3rd platoon, and I seen him holding the mic up close. And so I knew I had to get to the mic, so I started diving, and I only had time to dive and get back on the ground between bursts. And I finally got to the phone, and I used my CO's call sign. I said, this is 6, cease fire. And they ceased.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he come back and said, who's using my call sign? I says, that's not important. What is important is we're getting hell blown out of us back here.
Right, especially by friendly fire.
Yeah, and he says, he says, we're getting the hell blown out of us too. He says, I need that artillery. And I said, take it, just move it out of here.
Yeah,
You
not
know,
our
but-
spot.
Yeah, so
Wow.
that was the one time that I laid under friendly fire, and our friendly fire is pretty tough.
Yeah.
105s, battery
big stuff.
105s brings a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And you say that was after your injury?
Yeah, that was after, like, I think that was May 27th.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was shot up April 20th.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you guys really got,
We started out with 88 and ended up with 35.
Man.
So it was one of the big battles that gets talked about, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We just run into them, and
I always think February 6th, because we went 8 days, and every day we'd fight them. Now, it wasn't 24/7. The first day was, I think, the worst day of about 6 hours.
But you were running out of ammo during that one, weren't you?
Yeah, and then it was surprising because, we got this hill, and 5 days later we moved off of it. And I always think, well, why did we even need the damn hill?
Right.
And one lieutenant would always say, Murph, don't ask any questions. And I'm thinking, well, come on, don't be
Yeah.
stupid here.
You just figure it's above your pay grade.
Yeah, that's one. And I know the one time when we went in and helped, and I'm thinking that was Bravo Company, 3rd of the 8th, and it was the only time they'd ever bought the body bags out to us.
Mm-hmm.
Usually if we'd have 1, 2, or 5 dead, we'd put them in a poncho and get them on the bird.
Right.
With this time, we bagged 78 Americans.
Mm.
To me, gut-wrenching, but all of a sudden, 4 colonels showed up. And, of course, they got the starch fatigues on. They've got their insignia or their
Sure.
rank and stuff. And I'm telling one of my new guys, you stay away from them. And he's, what do you mean? I said, oh, they look a little different than us. And he said, well, yeah, they've got starch fatigues and new camouflage covers on their helmets. And he says, and Murph, you look pretty dirty. And I told him, I said, well, if a sniper sees that, they're going to probably shoot at that.
I wondered if that's what you were going to be getting at. Is they're a high value target right
They're
there?
going to be High Valley, but that's even, that May 27th, and I wasn't there, but I read, I think it was 13 of you guys gave their synopsis of the battle.
Mm-hmm.
And yet then, and the highest ranking officer of the 4th Infantry got killed that day, or Lieutenant Colonel Carter.
right.
Yeah, and yet, and Lyle won't. And because I've talked to a couple of them that were in that battle, they always thought he should have had a Silver Star.
Mm-hmm.
And and of course, in my 10.5 months in Vietnam, and Lyle's 12 months, I only seen 5 guys get Bronze Stars for valor, and I knew 4 of them. And then, and with my Lieutenant White on February 6th, and Greg Robillard, another sergeant, on February 6th, and myself. And then Lyle got the Bronze Star with valor about, I think it was 4 days after I was wounded.
Mm-hmm.
And he can tell you that story, or that.
Yeah, I was going to say we've touched on your having been wounded a couple times now, so I think it's time for you two to relay that whole scenario on what went on, if you don't mind.
No, and I let because Lyle led the charge that day, and yet.
Well, it was a company move, and so I had the map, and I was point. My squad was on point, them guinea pigs he's talking about.
Yeah.
I was out front there with my guys, and it was in the monsoons in April there, and muddy, and so to go straight to our night location was up a steep hill, and I knew we couldn't do that. And so I came around on a more gradual terrain, and as I got onto that, then these steps cut into the hill appeared, which is the last thing you want to see.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you going to do? I mean, we got to go to the night location, and that's where battalion is sending us, and so we head up the hill, and I come around this tree, and this one of their sentries took off, and I dived back up behind the tree, get under cover, and so here we are now. And so then I'm working with the company commander and figuring out, what to do now. And he put one platoon on line going up the hill because it was kind of open. It wasn't thick jungle, and anyway, I went with another group to go look for the guy that took off, and they ended up getting him. And then I went back. Then I got back to where the captain was. He had kind of set up on this little bare spot, kind of a little high spot, but it was a big hill that we were supposed to go up, and so then they wanted me to go up. I went up to see what my squad was doing because I was with this. And they had some guys pinned down, so then they told me to take over calling in artillery on these guys because I had more experience. I was the old guy by then, everybody else got hit.
Grandpa.
And so I went up and I adjusted the artillery, and I realized that I didn't even know what azimuth that original shot was on, so I don't know if So I hollered at him. I said, "You guys better get down. This one's going to be close." And it was close. The dinks took off running up the hill. And so then I got them guys situated, and I went back and started talking to the captain. And that's when he told me that we had 6 wounded. Mm-hmm. And I said, there was an RTO there, and there was another guy there. And I says, can we go down and help get these guys out of here? And he said, well, if you want to. And so I took the other 2 guys, and we headed down there. Well, and I ran into his platoon sergeant, and his arm was hanging, and he was hobbling along, and he told me, I says, where are these guys wounded at, And he said 2 names. He said Murphy. And I said, Gene Murphy? And he said, I don't know. He said, Murphy. So I knew Gene was hit now. And so he says, where's he at? Well, he's back over there. So I took off. There was a trail. Because what we had ran into was NVA hospital. And this is what we were dealing with, was the sentries and the guards. And so I went on down and went around, and the next guy I come to was an RTO hiding behind a tree. And I said, what you doing? I said, you better get up there. And he says, I'm not getting up there. And I said, where's Murphy? And he says, back there. So I had already went by Gene.
Oh, wow.
Had no idea. So now I don't, how am I going to find Gene? And so the noise discipline was out the window. We were using machine guns now. So I turned and went back, and then I just started hollering his name. Them guys were right with me, stayed right with me, and then he finally heard me and hollered back and says, Bose, I'm over here.
So you were conscious the whole time?
Oh, yeah.
So you took multiple shots then, or?
Yeah, I took a couple through the right side and one through the right leg.
Uh-huh.
But he was a poor shot.
Figured there'd be some humor here with you guys.
And it was funny because I went up the same steps, but half my squad made it up, and half Robillard. And all of a sudden, my lieutenant says, we're going to take your squad, Murph. And I said, only half of them showed up. Well, he said, then I'm going to take Robillard's. And of course, Sergeant Robillard said, hey, only half my guys. So we combined, I'm thinking 8 guys, and I was walking point, and actually one of the guys that I think they shot, I was actually following the blood sign, and we probably went 400 meters, and that's when we ran in, and the guy that shot me, to me, was only about 20 feet from me, popped out of a hole, and he shot me twice, and it was up on point, but we got in an argument, my lieutenant and myself, on them steps, because he said, no, Sarge, you don't have to go, you're starting to get short. And I said, no, you're taking half my men, I'm going to go with them. Yeah, and he ended up losing a leg himself. He got shot 8 times in the legs that day.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and we took off, and initially getting shot, I thought I was going to die, because I'd seen the people that I'd met in my lifetime float above me, but it was just their faces, though. And to me, they floated, and it was probably seconds, but they floated and floated. Well, my grandmother was up there, who just died 30 days roughly prior. Yeah, and of course, I'm saying to the Lord, I don't want to go yet, and I got things I want to do. And I always think we made if you want to call it a contract or a pact, okay, Sergeant, we're going to let you live. We're going to let you go back to the world, but you got some work to do when you get back there. You can't go back and drink and do drugs and be stupid. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I saw that portion in the story when I was reviewing again today. That was part of the deal.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of vets that get caught up in that when they're trying to cope with everything and stuff. And you stood by your word on that.
Well, and it was funny because and of course when I think the first words I said to Bose, what the hell took you so long? And then I always think, what do I say to a guy that, I always say the good Lord and Sergeant Bose saved Sergeant Murphy's tail. And so how do you thank a guy to say, hey, thank you? Yeah, it was my life. Yeah. And I always think, we know 12 guys on the wall because we lost I think it was 222 guys that year. So you look at that, and Lyle Bose's name could be on there, and Gene Murphy's name could be. Yeah, so I always think that, he let us come back to the world, and life's been good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
well, we're going to get into some of that too, what you guys have been doing since.
But
that's coming up a little later here.
Yeah, but and again, he said he sent one of the guys after a poncho right away, but his adrenaline was rushing pretty high too, because he actually ripped 2 trees out that were, I'm thinking 2 to 2 inches, 3 inches in diameter, and we didn't have a machete or a, he ripped them out with his bare hands.
Well, there's a picture in this book of you, and you look pretty beefy to me in that book. And I gotta ask you this. Maybe do I have permission to take photos out of here and put them on the podcast?
Yeah.
I think I asked Eldon Nygaard that, so I think I've got some. But I just wanted to check with you guys as well. But you had some beef to you, and then beef plus adrenaline. Now you're ripping trees out of the ground.
Yeah. And it was funny because they got, they made that poncho or that stretcher for me, and Lyle told Demio. Now Demio, I think we sent him back in 2-3 times with, you can call it battle fatigue, PTSD, or whatever. Well, and Lyle said you got to lift him right in the middle where it was shot up, and Demio said, no, I don't think I can. And Lyle says, you either do it, or I'm going to shoot your ass right here. And he said, I will. And they carried me about 400 meters. And I'm still thinking we're going to get out because this was probably 4:30, the initial that I was hit. And I was the first one hit. And then there was 5 others, that were hit. Or Lightfoot got hit right after I did. And matter of fact, Mike McCarthy was my doc or medic. And he's yelling at me. And, of course, I'm telling him, stay away from me. Said the guy's got me zeroed in. And, actually hit me twice here. I played dead on him. And then I felt my thighs, and I thought, Japers, on my feet still there. So I tipped my head just enough, lifted my head to see the tips of my boots. He seen me, and he opened up to me with like a 30-round burst. because you could actually see him coming up the right side. I
Yep.
mean, the dirt was just, well, and I didn't know I was hidden right above the right ankle,
Uh-huh.
you know, but I mean, that,
Just tracking right up
Yeah,
side
right
of your
up,
lower
yeah.
body.
yeah, well, and of course, Doc McCarthy said, I think I can, he said, I see the little guy. I think I can take him out.
Oh, man.
And I said, Doc, just stay down. No, he said, I'm going to take him out. And he took him out.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, yeah, so they carried me about 400 meters and we got, you know, back to where the company was, you know, and then the bird was coming in. So I'm thinking we're going to get out. But we didn't have the LZ or the landing zone to put the bird in, you know, and he's hovering on top of the trees and we can hear the NVA just shooting the hell out of the bird. And I'm thinking, boy, how long can he hold? And they've, to my knowledge, they had one guy in the bird and they had one guy in the basket, the penetrator basket. And all of a sudden I can hear one of the pilots, we're going to abort, we're taking too many rounds.
Yeah.
And they lifted off.
There's
And
only
then
so many they can take
Yeah, well, and then we knew if we'd be there the whole night.
for a while. Yeah.
And then he actually dug me a hole because we thought, well, I mean, are they going to overrun us? How many are they out there? You know.
So when you first found him, you had to rip trees out of the ground, get him drug out of there.
Yeah.
Did you have to do like
Get
some?
him to the dust off, you know.
Yeah. Some. Did you do some triage on his wounds right away, or try
No,
or
that they
you had
did
to
that
get him out?
Yeah, the medical already did
So there was people there to.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
to begin with, and then they left him.
Okay. And then that's when you were looking for him, and he'd been patched a little
Yeah.
bit, so you weren't like bleeding out right
No.
then or anything.
No, and
No.
the way it sounds, they said I didn't lose much blood.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you think you'd bleed out. I mean, we laid 14 hours.
Uh huh.
No, I don't. He didn't bleed hard, but it went through his side and through his spine,
Right.
and so they got the patch on it. And I didn't even roll him over as long as he was breathing.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to get him out of there, you know.
Right. Wow.
So, yeah, it was. It's pretty devastating, you know, because you're really kind of helpless, you know. You're dependent on everybody, you know, and them guys and them choppers, they were good, you know, but he took off, and it was dark, and he took off, and he tells me that he went about half a mile at the most, and he knew a place that was secure. And that just boggles my mind that we're out here in a battle like this, and we're a half mile from a secure area.
Right.
But he flew that area all the time. He was the dust off guy. He was in he was in control of his unit. And so now he had to take this chopper, and he's losing the things. His systems are failing him, and he can see that. So he flies to this area that he knows is secure, and he starts setting her down, but he's got to set this guy on a string that's down below him about 10, 15 feet. And he's got to set that guy down on the ground, and then he's got to move his chopper over so he don't set on the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did that, and he got set on the ground, and the chopper quit.
Right then. Man.
So then he had another bird come and pick them up, and it
Right.
came back the next morning. But, I mean, he was lucky he didn't.
Yeah.
I mean,
no doubt.
it's just
Or
war.
it didn't crash or.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He was lucky he was good enough to know that he had to get out of there when he got out of there, you know.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you know, he was doing all he can, and you know, I talked to him, and as I know more about what was going on over there now than I ever did when we were there.
Oh, I'm sure.
As I learned, you know, to me, I think those guys were everywhere. And they just picked their times. when they,
Oh, the NBA.
yeah,
Yeah, and I
they
do
just
too.
picked their times when they ambushed us and stuff because they knew the country and they were there. And the more I learn about it, the more I think about it, you know, we were we were in some bad stuff.
Mm-hmm. Man. So your injury happened 10.5 months in
Yeah,
to your commitment
yeah.
or your tour?
And we always thought, I mean, I guess I always thought we'd make it. Yeah. And we knew my brother, he came over 12 days after we got there. And I remember that next morning, the 13th day we were in Vietnam, he comes over to my bunker and he says, go home. And I said, what the hell you mean go home? He said, your brother's here now. He said, you go and tell that captain you don't like any of this stuff. You don't like sleeping on the ground. You don't even like the food them sea rats are giving us. And you don't like drinking that creek water anymore. So your brother's here, so now you can go home. And of course I said, but you don't think we can make it a year? You know? And of course he said, I don't know if we can or not.
Man.
Yeah. And, yeah, so I mean, that, I guess that, what, bond of brothers? Or, you know, you can call it what you want, but I mean, yeah, and it was funny because anytime his unit got into it, if, you know, his squad was on point, we'd always tell the lieutenant, let's move up. And he said, no, just stay. And he would do the same. If my squad was on point and got into it. I mean, you look back and, yeah, and I guess I always think we were both fortunate to make it out.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, God willing, and I mean, yeah, and so, yeah, and you shouldn't, and when I first met my wife, I would never go without water again in my lifetime. She used to put a quart of water beside my nightstand.
Yep.
And she said, well, why am I doing this? Because I said I'd never go without water again.
Yep.
Yeah, the little things are...
Little things that are truly big things.
Yeah.
That affect you the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Water is a big deal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, your survival training, they teach you just a few days of that. I mean, you can go a couple weeks without food or even more, but that water thing, you gotta have that.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, so we can hop back into some of these stories if something else comes up, but let's move into what you're doing now, the both of you, because there's some history from there as well. And this is by far not the first interview you've done, not the first filming you've done. So why don't you guys go ahead and talk about your after service and like you said, you can hop back if a memory comes up, just hop right in there.
Well, and even, you know, and we were on the same orders actually to go to Germany. And Lyle came out to Fitzsimmons in Aurora, the Denver suburb, and he spent a week with me. And he said, "I'll be back the last day." And he came back the last day of his leave, and he said, "I'm not going to Germany." And I said, "Well, you're not going AWOL?" No. He said that. He said, "I can do more for you right here than I can in Germany." So he says, and I said, "Yeah, but you got orders." But he said, "I'm going to fly to the Pentagon. They can just change my orders." And I said, well, they're not going to change your orders. I mean, you know, come on, let's be realistic. You know, and he said, yeah, but I can guard that gate out front. I said, you're not an MP. He said, well, when we went to Vietnam, we weren't infantry, and they made us infantry. Now I fly to the Pentagon, they can just make me an MP. And I said, I don't think they're going to do that. But, you know, so he leaves that afternoon, and I'm thinking I won't see him for 6 months.
Sure.
Because we had 6 months left in the military. He's back the next, I think it was probably the next morning, late morning, at my bed. He said, I didn't get Fitzsimmons, but he said, I got Fort Carson, which is only about 50, 60 miles down the road. Mm-hmm. So he said, I'll be up every weekend to get you out of here.
Oh, man.
And he'd come up and I remember, I think the first leave they gave me, and we went to, I think it was Central City. And of course, we had a few beers, and they let me go in a steep parking lot. I mean, you know, and I'm thinking I'm going to break both legs, and I'm going to end up more time in that hospital.
Yeah.
But they had a hold of me and stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it was funny and they gave me a pair of Army low cuts, but I didn't know, because of the spinal cord injury, I put them on and my toes curled up. So when I took them off, 4 hours later, 5 hours later, I had blisters on the top and the bottom.
Oh,
of it.
yeah.
Yeah, because I don't feel my feet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, so learn something there to make sure your toes are, straight down. Or,
Right.
Yeah.
Man, and you're doing everything you can to stay close to this guy and take care of him, aren't you?
Well, and then,
Pretty sweet.
yeah. Well, and then in August he comes in on the weekend and he says, "I'm going home, getting an early out the end of October, and you're going back to Dakota with me." And I just had surgery, and I said, "Man, I just had surgery. Look at these tubes." Yeah, and he said, "You got about 3 months to heal up, because you're going home."
Mm-hmm.
So he said, "You talk to the doctor. Come Monday morning, you tell the doc." And I said, "Any chance, doc, we can do this?" "Yeah, let's shoot for that." And of course, I only weighed in roughly probably 2 months after being hit. I only weighed in at Fitzsimmons at 83 pounds.
Oh, man.
Full of infection. And
Mm-hmm.
he didn't know how far, and I didn't know how long can he ride in a vehicle, so he had a big Dodge Charger 440 Magnum. Well, I don't think he drove much under 105. And we had about 4 pillows. And it was funny because we were going to spend the first night at Uncle Pete's and my Uncle Nant place in Pierre. So we called him. He called him from a payphone somewhere in Wyoming. And I thought,
Hot Springs.
Hot Springs. And he comes back shaking his head. And I said, "What's wrong, Lyle?" And he said, "Uncle Pete thinks we're crazy." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he says, well, he wanted to know what time we'd get to Pierre. And I said, we'd be there by midnight. And he asked where we were. And I told him, and Uncle Pete said, "No way in hell you can be here by midnight." We got there at 11:30. And I think the first words from Uncle Pete was, "How fast were you guys driving?" I said, "I don't know. I was just riding."
I was just riding.
Yeah.
Pretty sweet ride to be riding in, being escorted by your best bud over here.
Yeah. And there was, and that first night in White, like 200 people came up and welcomed me home. So, and I guess I always thought the guys from the Midwest had a better homecoming than, say, people from Chicago, New York, California.
Yeah, because a few of the guys I've talked to, one of them was in the hospital in Chicago, and if you stayed like maybe a half a block from that hospital, you might be okay. But the welcome home was not a welcome home at all. So I was happy to hear what you just said.
Yeah.
But of course, it's your small town homecoming, and they understand more.
Yeah. And then that was even in Vietnam. You trusted the guys from the Midwest better than you did the guys from California, New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just.
Yeah, a guy I go to church with, Al Sandvig, we did an interview a couple months ago, and I always tell people I went to church with this guy for 32 years. I thought I heard him say 32 sentences, but he really opened up when we were talking on the podcast, and all the people around that area. It only took like 3.5 days to become my most viewed podcast there.
Okay.
But the way he described it, because small area, once again, he said the worst I got was silence. Whereas you're in these cities, guys talked about California, Chicago, and they would just get totally berated, with, things that they would say that were just outlandish and stuff. But Al said the worst he got in the Midwest area was people were just quiet. Yeah. They at least didn't get angry and mean with him.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty interesting the way he put that.
And then, of course, from that little town or village of White, that farm community, 38 guys went to Vietnam.
38 out of what, 400?
Well, there was 400 in the town, but
the
farm community, but and the thing is, when I came home, I'm thinking there was 4 or 5 Vietnam vets came home at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So we hung out, and Lyle hung out with us, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what have you been up to since when you got out of the service and you got back home here? You're obviously taking care of and staying in touch with Gene. What else went on in your life?
Well, I I got a job driving truck in where I live right now. And I ended up marrying the boss's daughter the next year. And then he died, and then they kind of closed things down, really shrunk the operation of it down. And then I went into business in the rock crushing with another fella. And I've been in that business all my life. And my son owns it now and is running it. But it was a lot of hard work. But we grew up working hard. That's just your day.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just kind of went back to the same thing I was doing when I went in, working hard. And so we had 125 employees. And
you weren't crushing rocks by getting arrested going over 100 miles an hour
well, I'll tell you what,
in the pen.
I didn't know how all that was going to work because I certainly had no idea. But he was laying in the hospital and recuperating, and it just looked to me, and his aunt was a nurse, and it just looked to me like she could take care of him just as well as they could take care of him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided that him going home would be better for him than anything else. And so I figured we'd just give that a shot. And his so we're headed from Hot Springs. We get up on the interstate 90, and of course I'm cooking. And I can't believe no highway patrolman ever stopped us because it was a big, powerful motor. I mean, 110 mile an hour, nothing for that machine.
Yep.
And so I'm sitting there, and I go to Wall. I'm going to go take 14, and shoop, I went right by the exit. And so, I'm not going to try to turn around, and I'll just go to Vivian. So I went to Vivian and right up through Vivian. Of course, there's no traffic on that. But anyway, we got to their place, and we went to the front door, and the first thing his aunt said was, "Did you hit that ice out on 14? And I said, "No, what?" She says, 14's covered with black ice.
Oh, my word.
And so the good Lord was still looking at us.
To be. Yep, all those faces floating around.
Yeah, I mean, so that was a real deal. And but anyway, so then the next morning, we got loaded up, and she's going to White with us. So all there is, I've got a month's worth of stuff in that Dodge Charger for him to be at home, his medical supplies and everything. She gets in the back seat, and we go out, and we get on the highway, and I start throttling her up. And she grabs hold of my back seat, pulls up, says, "How fast you going?" And I says, "Just lean back and enjoy the ride." And she did. And so anyway, probably pretty foolish, but that's the urgency I felt.
Right.
That I'm kind of out here in thin ice no matter how you look at it. So and it worked. And
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, because I had a 30-day convalescent leaving. At 30 days, they put 20 pounds on me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so, I mean, when I got back to Fitzsimmons Army Hospital, they said, "Is that you, Murph?" Because 20 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you needed it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was, and that was one of the things. My father would call me in Japan and talk to me, and the first words were always, "Have they weighed you what? And how much do you weigh?"
Right.
And I said, "To my knowledge, they haven't weighed me." And he said, "Well, what do you think you weigh?" And I said, Pops, maybe 100 pounds, and then I could hear the wheels turning. And I said, yeah, but I'm still alive. You know,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, no doubt.
yeah.
Yeah, the first thing I seen when I walked into his hospital room, he grabbed a hold of the bar, over his bed to move himself around with and everything. And that arm looked like a chicken leg to me.
Yeah.
There was nothing on it, and I thought, wow. That was pretty devastating or whatever, because when they took him up in that chopper, I knew I would have no idea what happened to him from that point on until somebody from home wrote me a letter.
Yep.
And they did, and he lived. That's when I found out he lived.
Yeah.
That's
pretty amazing.
And I always look back, and some of the guys in the bush that were shot up bad, and I'm thinking, we're even going to get them on the bird, made it. And I seen other guys, Jerry Warburton, his name's on the wall. And I was the first one to him. He got shot through the knee. I'm thinking 25 minutes later, we're dead.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he went into shock. I knew that because I popped him or slapped him a good one.
Mm-hmm.
But he did, but it hit an artery and I don't know, but he.
Yeah, pretty much an artery, you're going to bleed out pretty fast.
And
that's where the bullets didn't hit yours through here.
Yeah. And until you always look back, and then, boy, every hospital I was in, there was always somebody worse off than Sergeant Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
I had one buddy that was a quad from the neck on down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, couldn't even move his fingers. And
right.
Yeah.
That'd be horrible.
Oh, yeah, and Charlie, and this was at, they moved me to Milwaukee to a spinal cord center in the VA system, brand new center. And there was 18 of us Vietnam vets, and Charlie and they announced they're gonna allow us 2 beers every night. And Charlie said, "Murph, how am I gonna drink 2 beers?" I said, "Don't worry, Charlie. There's 2 of us that will drink them 2 beers for you." He said, "No." He said, "I want them." He said, "Yeah." Well, I said, "We're gonna have to." So we built him a table mounted on his wheelchair, and of course I put that first beer there, and he said, "Well, I still can't drink it." I said, "Well, you got to give us time, Charlie."
Yeah.
Put that long straw in it. I said, "Now drink up."
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a friend there.
Yeah, and he was concerned. This was 1970. He was concerned. Well, I'm never going to be. His folks were older. They were in their mid 80s, and he said, "I'm probably going to end up in a nursing home." I said, "Well, you never know. This day and age, they've got independent living centers, assisted living, and so forth." But and I lost track of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a couple buddies that were triple amps.
Yeah, got its own challenges there.
Oh yeah,
as well.
Yeah. So
just answer however much you would want, or not at all. Was there much trouble with the transition back out of, being in that environment back into being civilian? Or, sounds like your brain was really focused on him, so you had the purpose of really taking care of him, and you're starting your business, and you were dealing with your injury yet with a certain number of surgeries and stuff. And how did that go?
The day on May 27th, we lost, we started out with 88 and we ended up with 35 that day. And so then they pulled me out of the jungle on June 6th because that was the end. And June 10th, I was laying in bed at home on a farm.
That fast?
That fast. And so I couldn't eat. My mom would make me breakfast, and I'd go outside and go behind the garage and throw up. And that happened for 3 days or something like that. But then my stomach started getting fit, But myself, you start getting with your buddies, and and it was not. I did pretty good until I got over into Brookings around the college town.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I was 21. And so, you face everything there then, And,
right.
And So I always worked hard, but I drank hard too, you know. But I was always at work. But there was some times when it was in your head or whatever, and like some guy'd challenge you, and you think I'm afraid of you, and I just got done fighting with machine guns and grenades.
Yeah.
And so, you weren't willing to take a lot of
Right.
crap, so it took a few years my mom said, we sent a happy boy off to war and got an angry young man back.
Right.
And that's really kind of true. And another friend of mine put it probably the best I ever heard of it. He says, the worst part about it, Lyle, is, he says, I lost the laughter. And I think we all, to some degree, lost. It has come back or whatever. But life wasn't very funny, after that.
When you say it's come back, but that's been a long time ago.
Yeah, and so, it's not as prevalent as it was. But, I never thought about that until he said that, and I'm thinking, you're right, But I've been successful. I was lucky. I didn't have any war wounds, and so I'm a patriot, I mean, we had all the stuff around the Vietnam story, but it didn't matter because us guys that were out there in the jungle, wherever we were, doesn't matter what job you had or our support people, we were fighting a war. We weren't sitting around thinking about what the politicians were doing. We were fighting a war. And we did a great job. We never got beat. We got hurt, but we didn't get beat. And so as time went on, we've been of course, Gene more than I, been in military organizations. And so now here, people want to hear it. When we come back, we didn't wear our uniforms because we didn't want people to know anything about it, and that was the attitude. Now, people can't get enough of it. They say, keep telling it. So we're doing that. But that's a double-edged sword, because I've never thought about those times as much as I do now.
Right.
And and I've got more time to think about it. So, and that's probably lucky that it's now and not back then that it dwelled in my head. But it was the first time I went to the wall that took me down. It took a while, and it was a lieutenant veteran that asked me. I was out in the gravel pit. He come out, going to sell me a crusher or whatever. He was a salesman. He says, how you doing? And I said, I was doing fine until I went to the wall. He says, have you read any books? And I said, no. He says, well, read The 13th Valley by John Del Vecchio. So anyway, my daughter gave me that book for my birthday, and I read that, and it was about a FNG that went in there for his first 2-3 weeks, and it was a thick book, and it was a lot. And by the time I got done with that book, I was so sick of Vietnam for the second time.
The second time, right.
That I could put it away. That book was amazing. That it allowed me to get it out of my head, because I was sick of it. That's And so that was an amazing experience that I got lucky that guy told me that. When,
Helping you
I mean, here he
process.
comes. How did he know I was a Vietnam vet? I don't know. Maybe the guy, somebody knew something or whatever, but he came out and then he told me that. And never seen the guy again.
Oh, really? Never bought a crusher either, huh?
Well, never bought a crusher, but so it's amazing how things happen. It is totally, if you don't believe in the good Lord, you're really off base.
I agree.
Because there's no reason in the world for Gene and I to be here today. None, other than the good Lord wants us to be here.
Yeah. You weren't done, like you were saying.
Yeah.
When you were talking to him directly.
Yeah. And I guess I look at, and I've asked Lyle this a few times in our early days. I said, you're working 16, 18, 20 hours a day. Are you working to keep the damn demons in the box, or what do you? And he'd always say, well, it's got to be done, Murph, and he's done very well. I guess I'm proud of him. I mean, not only, I guess, my friend, but my brother, and I look at that, and you've worked hard, Lyle.
Enjoyed every minute of it.
And yeah.
Are you fully retired now?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I talk to my son every day. I mean, we just and I live right across. I built a lake from gravel, took out, and
Right.
so the office and the shop and everything is on the south side, and I'm on the north side.
There you
So
go.
and it's super, but.
But I remember also when he does the early days, and he was tight. I remember they were in a little trailer house, and no air conditioning. Because the one time I was up there and I said, well, maybe I'll buy you a fan. We can't afford a fan. Don't talk about that. And then I'd come in the winter months, and usually Marcia, his wife, would say, keep your coat and gloves and stocking cap on.
Oh, going through the trials.
Yeah.
Building a business.
Yeah.
So are you just south of like Brookings, South Dakota area, or
Well, do you go up there on occasion?
not real often, but my wife does to go see her sister once in a while. But
Okay, so if you're on the interstate and you're going north and you look over to your left, you'll see a log house on a lake. That's my
oh,
house.
okay, yeah, I'll have to pay attention next time
You
I
see
go
a
there.
big gravel pit,
And,
but on the north end of it, yeah, it's his home.
and I have built a memorial or a monument. I have a berm over there, and and this thing it kind of started when Trump was first running, and I bought a flagpole, and I had an American flag and a Trump flag on it, and then the thing just kind of took his life, got into a life of its own, and so now, I invite everybody to stop and see it. It's right by the driveway to my house, right, and it's a monument. And then this fall, I put music to it, so when you walk up to it, the patriotic music
really?
starts. So
That is cool.
So if you ever come to Brookings, you come to my place and you walk up to that rock.
And he's got two statues, one a Army statue and one a Marine Corps, because he hasn't said his son went in, Jason went in just as Desert Storm was going to break out. And of course I called him and chewed him out. and now he's got a grandson that just finished in December, finished his 3-year obligation in the Marines. And he's got another grandson that's going to go in as an officer, a gentleman. So
Yeah, we were talking about that in the office right next door this morning before we started this. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
A legacy of military service.
Yeah, and to me, it doesn't matter when you're in the military. Gene and I, we were standing in line and they grabbed us and took us off for what they wanted us to do. The same thing goes on every day today. And we have our military, and they say it's been weakened here lately, but my bet is that 75, 80% of them guys are just as good and tough as they ever were.
Mm-hmm.
And peacetime military is just as important, if not more important, than wartime, because, that's what keeps us out of war.
The deterrent.
It's a deterrent. And so, I've had guys say, well, my deal was no big deal. They were in the National Guard and they had to go over to Iraq. That is a big deal. That is a big deal. I felt sorry for every one of them National Guard guys because not only did they have to go over there, they had to go back. And for a while, they were getting beat on pretty hard. And so, but they did it. They didn't want to do that. They did it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we did it. We didn't want to do that, but we did it. And we will continue to do that forever. So we never have to worry about our country not being free, because we live here.
That's the hope.
A bunch of
and a lot of armed civilians as well.
That's right. That's right. And we know what that's about. And so I have a high regard for every one of them servicemen. I just was lucky enough to meet Gwendolyn.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what a joy that was. And she is just as proud as she can be.
Oh, yeah.
Of all of that stuff. And
she's in the walker, and she was just telling me, she can lose her balance pretty easy, and she did stand up straighter and hanging on the walker, but she just was saying, I wish I could just really stand up straight. She had that sharp salute and stuff too. And I was like, you bet. Absolutely. But you definitely don't want to fall down. But she's got it deep down inside of her. That was very evident.
She's a proud lady, and I'm proud of her.
Yep.
And
very cool.
And I tell the politicians, freedom isn't free. Somebody, paid a price.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also told our senators and our rep that any more wars, you get to go first, and they'd be short-lived.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
So speaking of politicians and out in Washington, let's go into what you did out there.
And just,
with the DAV.
DAV, and I came back and I got involved at first with the Paralyzed Veterans of America. Actually, it was up at the VA, and it was the president of PVA, a Korean vet. And he introduced me to himself, and he said, you're going to go with a meeting right now. I said, well, what do you mean a meeting? We got a PVA meeting. And I said, okay, what's PVA stand for? Paralyzed Veterans of America. So that's where I got started.
Right.
And then the DAV kept saying, Murph, we need you to come and help us. And so I started working with the DAV. Actually, when I came out, I was fortunate enough to meet a young lady from Bruce, and we dated a couple of years and got married. And in fact, it's going to be 53 years this year.
Nice.
Yeah. So
congratulations.
So she's a retired nurse, so I got a built-in nurse.
There you go.
You got to eat these things and do this. But got involved with the DAV and, went up through the chapter ladders to commander and then the state ladders. And then I was very fortunate to be the national commander of the DAV in 87, 88. And actually moved to D.C. and worked.
I was going to ask you if you had to move out there.
You didn't have to, but they encouraged it, So I moved and tried to get back here like 2 to 3 times a month, and my family, Aldine and Aaron, would meet me at different times, and that was educational for a kid from South Dakota and we're like roughly 5,000 members, and I mean, in our whole state that were members at that time. Well, I mean, California, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, they've got chapters that are 5,000 members. So I was very humbled to become the national commander.
Isn't there a picture of you in the book shaking hands with somebody kind of important?
Yeah, well,
Who was that?
That was President Reagan.
President Reagan.
Yeah, and he announced, it was funny because we got word we're going to meet at the White House with the president. And they called us in like 6 a.m. that morning, and the different directors are hitting me with different things. And then finally the adjutant says, "Murph, you don't seem too nervous." And I said, "Well, he isn't going to shoot us or anything." So I said, "We're just going to meet." But, well, what do you think he's meeting? I said, "Well, I think he's going to announce that he's going to support the cabinet level position. He's going to let us have a table, a plate right at that table, a seat right there," which he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then afterwards they said, "Did you have an inside track on that?" No. I said, you got to think, hey, what's he going to, why is he meeting with the four national commanders of the big four?
Yeah, there's got to be some reason.
Yeah. So I said, that was the reason, Yeah. And I've been fortunate. I got to meet 3 other presidents, but I always look at, different things and I guess we got to look at, hey, what do veterans need, in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and that's where I'm proud of some of the stuff. We started a transportation program here in '84 in the city of Sioux Falls. Well, in '87, it went throughout the nation with our national DAV to transport veterans. It's a free ride for any vet. You don't have to be a member of any organization. You just have to have that appointment at the VA hospital or clinic.
Yeah.
And we've got like 26 vans in South Dakota. But then I look at the different things that, should be done. I look at a East Side River or East Side State Veterans Home or assisted living, and the state should have done this 20 years ago. Vietnam vets, the average age is 76 now.
Yeah.
And I guess I think, the VA on a national level, they've got to look at more home health care. Keep that veteran at home if possible, instead of, putting them in an institution.
Yep. There's another guy I've gone to church with, and he was a Navy Seabee, and he and I did this at my place, and he's at the VA right now. I may be going and seeing him either today or tomorrow again.
Okay.
It's been a little bit because I was traveling to see some family over Christmas, but yeah, they're actively. He was in hospice.
Yeah.
But then he has been bounced back. But the VA is helping him because he has a house out in the country near me.
Okay.
And he actually passed the evaluation to drive again.
Okay.
And he's getting stronger.
Yeah.
But they are helping him find an apartment in town that would
Okay.
work well for him. Because he'll probably be using a walker and stuff.
Yeah.
But he's walking alone with a walker now instead of a helper and all that stuff. So the VA's helping him.
Yeah.
Have a place in Sioux Falls and have the services that he needs.
Yeah.
On that. So were you guys involved with the new cemetery that went in on the north side?
Yeah, we worked on that. We'd worked on a cemetery for 25 years. We were even looking at a national cemetery, and we always thought, well, okay, we're going to get Minnesota, Iowa, and South Dakota, the senators and the reps together, and we're going to put one right on that corner.
Right.
So we're going to have more, more power with, instead of 2 senators, we're going to have 6 of them.
Right.
And we're going to have so many House members. And boy, we worked on that 25 years and there was just no traction.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that long.
Well, and then all of a sudden we're looking at a state cemetery, and I congratulate Ken Tunison. I call him the leprechaun because he's about 6'6", a Vietnam vet. And then Terry Paulson, who runs the Paralyzed Veterans of America. They led the charge, but then they got, at that time, House member Larry Zickman involved, and now he's a senator, and then also Senator Jim Salzer. And I know both Senator Jim Salzer and, at that time, Representative Zickman. They got their tail chewed by Mr. Governor Dugard more than once. And they stuck to their guns. They said, no, we need this, and we need it now. And then the state, I guess the government was, the state government was throwing all kinds of roadblocks, and I'm thinking, and it was funny because Dugard actually said, don't worry about the money. You come up with the land, we'll do it. Well, all of a sudden, the city of Sioux Falls gave them the land.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden, the governor and the lieutenant governor said, damn, these guys,
Ooh, they're serious.
They're serious, and they came up with the land. So now what are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they were throwing roadblocks, and we were popping the roadblocks, or, you know, I mean,
Right.
And I think the last one was you got to come up with $3 million in endowment for operating, and that's what they were concerned about. To me, they were concerned about the annual maintenance. But in my testimony, I told them, I said, veterans have already given blood, sweat, and tears for this. I said, they bring in, and I said in VA comp, they bring in something like, I'm thinking it's around $235 million every annual that they get VA comp. And how many times does that turn around in that city or that county or in the state of South Dakota? You know, so I said, you know, so we raised that $3 million, and it's in the kitty now. And of course, we're very fortunate they haven't used any of it, but I know they're looking at this year. They're looking at there's emergency. There's a bill in, and I'm thinking it's Senate Bill 52, and that's to add to that cemetery columbariums, and they got to put so much money up front. But to my knowledge, they will get that money back from the federal government.
Yeah, because that land is just beautiful out there.
Yeah.
You know, what they have built out there is so small compared to what it can be, but it's obviously got to last for decades.
Yeah.
But it's state-owned, but they're going to follow all the federal rules or regulations,
federal
whatever.
guidelines,
Yeah, very cool. I'm registered out there.
And I am too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because I think, gee, I mean, and I still remember when we got it passed and the governor signed it. Now, usually the governor sticks around and visits with the veterans.
Mm-hmm.
Governor Dugard was gone. I think, why wouldn't you do this if, the veterans have followed through, and I guess, I look at them veterans. Every veteran signed a blank check that he would do anything, and he or she would do anything for America, and they would give their life if need be.
Yep.
Yeah, and I get angry when the politicians, any federal or state, we can't do that, Mr. Murphy, because it's going to cost too much money. And I said, when they sent our young tails to Vietnam, I never heard them say anything. We're worried about the number of bullets you're going to use. So how much is this going to cost us?
Right.
I've never heard that. And I get angry when Lyle first came home, he couldn't use the VA because they put veterans, if they don't have a service-connected injury, through a means test. So you make too much money, you can't use the VA. And I guess when we'd run into our senator or rep in Lyle's with me, I'd tell him the story. This guy saved my life. He carried me 400 meters and laid beside me the whole night. But I said, I can use the VA, but he can't. What's wrong with the system?
That was absolutely nuts.
Yeah, well, and so I said, that's got to be changed. And we actually, about probably 30 years ago, maybe even 35, we introduced a bill to put the president, vice president, and all the congressmen exclusive under the VA healthcare system. And I remember because I was one of them that helped write the resolution. Mm-hmm. And they finally introduced it like 2 years ago. So why wouldn't it? Because there's a VA in every state, and they can go to the one in D.C. if they're in D.C.
Yeah, my Uncle Glenn that I talked about had the 2 tours. He had done a lot of fighting. He's based out of Wisconsin.
Okay.
And they did a lot of fighting, suing the VA over this and that and testifying in D.C. and all that stuff too. So, I wonder if he had his hand in a little bit of that too, maybe.
Yeah.
The national attitude should be that anybody with a service-connected injury should be taken care of in whatever manner before they write any other checks, period.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're the reason we are here. They're the reason we are free. And a reason for everything. And yet we have these guys babbling along, talking about dollars, and then they send 50 or 500 billion here and whatever. And I don't care nothing about that. I mean, you just stop and think about the priorities. Who should have more priorities than the guy that gave his legs, his arms, or his life so we could have this?
Mm-hmm.
How can you come up with a priority above that? But they can't seem to figure it out. That's why I have a little trouble with, I don't know if you should say intelligence or attitude.
The logic.
Logic. I mean, give me a break. I mean, we're talking about peanuts. Give to the wounded warriors. Tunnel to towers. Towers to tunnels or whatever. You know, the money is available. These guys just got to get it straight. And I don't know how we get that message through.
Mm-hmm. Well, by organizations like this, you know, to keep contact with the government
and I guess
officials.
I'm proud of the disabled American veterans. I mean, some of the programs we have operating here that, we shine, you know, and I can name, the transportation program, free to veterans. We take veterans hunting, fishing through a recreational program.
Yeah.
We just started a new program called Vittles for Vets. And we have a lady here that does all the cooking, and we provide the food and the containers, and she takes down to the Veterans Outreach on 14th. And that's for mainly homeless and needy vets.
Yeah, and I know some guard guys involved in, I think, Hero Haven.
Yeah,
that's what it's
and
called.
I just see that this weekend.
Yep.
It was on.
And one of my good friends, he retired as the Adjutant General for Air.
Okay.
We were talking about Adjutant Generals earlier. We didn't get to talk about this guy, but he's taking people fishing along with some other guard guys that come together and put their boats together and things, and at least do things for the vets. Yeah. But the basic thing is, you know, on the computer you see people just fighting about everything, you know, on Facebook, this and that. But people just have to do what they're capable of doing to try to make things better. Pick a subject. You know, it can be military, vet, anything. Yeah. The people have to do what they're capable of doing and then vote. Yeah. You know, educate yourself and vote. And, you know, that's like the minimum for people to do to try to make the changes that you guys are talking about. Yeah. You're doing a good job of it.
Well, we still got a lot more to do.
Yeah, that's why you still keep coming here to the DAV every day. And this is, I want to thank you guys for letting me to come in here. We met almost a year ago. Last year, the Vietnam Vet Day is like 29 March, I think. And last year it just happened to land on Good Friday because Easter was a little bit early. Yeah. And I brought this book, and you were a busy man. Both you guys were busy because when you're here, people want to talk to you guys. Yeah. I noticed that right away. And you had a book signing, I got your signatures in here. I missed one lady that was here.
Probably Mary Ann Swinson.
Yeah,
the little nurse.
That sounds right. So hopefully she's here this next year because I think
now we're
going to
do that the 28th.
28th.
Yeah,
on
we're
going
to
do
it a day early because of the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, so I plan on being here for that. But I remember that's the first time I talked to you, and I felt bad talking to you about it right then because you're a popular guy here. You know, people want to talk to him. And I just wanted you guys to understand that. I don't make money doing this. I'm not trying to. It goes on to YouTube and Spotify, but I had nothing to gain from this. I just really enjoy talking with people such as yourselves and getting some of the details of what's in your history, because you look at somebody, you have no idea what's going on in their life. Yeah. And you guys, and I don't remember if I've heard this about you, but I've witnessed it twice already. You're always asking about people. You're interested in them. asking about you don't know their wife or their grandkids and stuff, but you want to know about it. And today was the second time we went through that on different subject matters. But yeah, just quality individuals that I have sitting here in front of me today. And that's why I do this. I want the few people that hear this, it's a small podcast, but to be able to get a sense of what's behind the faces, and some at the DAV here in particular.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. But I remember, when I first got back, meeting World War I veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And then we used to host the ex-POWs here, mainly World War II and some Korea. And now they're all gone. But some of them stories, I sat, and they'd meet every month, and I'd sit for hours listening to them.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, whoa, and they were one never to open their cases. And I'd always say, well, you got to open that case. You should be 100%. I'm fine. And I know that one guy was was a bottom gunner of a B-17. And I'd bug him he opened it on his deathbed because I said, your wife maybe will be eligible for some funds.
Right.
And he opened it then, and we got him 100% overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Working with the VA and stuff.
Right. And you talked about guard guys too. And that's what I retired from, was the guard, active duty Air Force at first, and then down at Sioux City, and then up here in Sioux Falls, federal employee till the end. But the guy that I said retired is the Adjutant General for Air, and taking people fishing. That's what he hears from tons of people, that they don't think that they did enough, or there's always somebody worse off, like you and I've talked, but just almost feel a lot of people, we've met a lot of people that just don't feel that they're like eligible for benefits or deserve some benefits and stuff. And you're trying to crack that egg to get people to be proud of what they did.
Yeah. Oh, because I had one Vietnam vet for 40 years. I worked on him this year, and he shot to 90%. And I'm thinking,
all these years ago.
Yeah, and I said, and I said, John, you got PTSD, and then his wife said, Murph, and I will sign a letter stating that.
I bet there's tons of spouses that would do that.
But I always think, at least open that case and see what the government says, because you all served, you all signed a blank check, and some of them feel bad that, hey, I didn't go off to war. Well, you signed that blank check. You could have went off. I look at that and I'm thinking, yeah, you should be proud of your service.
Everybody's circumstances are different.
Oh, yeah.
Like out the Air Guard here, you got 30-some people flying a jet, and you got 1,000 people supporting it.
Yeah.
To get them,
you need that. Yeah.
So there is no job more important than the other one.
Right.
Because if that one doesn't get done, and the lower down it is, that's the basics. Them are the ones that got to be done right to get to the top, to make the top work.
Yep.
And
you can start with finance and food.
Yeah.
And work your way.
It's and people don't really, running a company, I witnessed that I just had this lowly job, and no, in my company there is no lowly jobs. All there are is jobs that need to be done. And so everybody does what there needs to be done, and that's it. We don't just go working to say we were working. We're working to get something done.
Right.
And so, and the people of this country are still patriotic. They, by way and above, now they're starting to see and understand, and they're all jumping in. And my count was 75-25 years ago, and I think I'm there. 75% of this country likes what's going on right now because they're patriots, and they want us to be taken care of.
That reminds me of one thing that I didn't bring up during the Vietnam Vet Day celebration and get together that you have here. I believe it was an MIA count for the state. You had the Never Forgotten MIA flags.
Yeah.
I believe, was it like seven
yeah.
South Dakota
Yeah.
MIAs yet
Yeah.
that are still waiting to be
Yeah.
brought back home?
And,
Talk about that a little bit. Am I explaining it right?
Yeah, there's 7 of them, and they thought they might be real close to the Christensen from Flandreau. I mean, that's what I've heard. And we're probably fortunate. Marty Pennock, our executive director here, is actually our chairman on a Disabled American Veteran national level. He's the chair of our POW MIA committee, which is only, I'm thinking it's 5 members on that committee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, and he's been on it the last 3 years. He actually took us down to Omaha, the site where they do the, I guess, the investigation for identification purposes.
Right.
Yeah, we went down there about a year and a half ago and spent a half a day with them.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I regret that I did not do. It was JTF-FA, Joint Task Force Full Accounting.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to volunteer, and they would put these teams together like every other month or so, and they would go into Vietnam and Laos and all these places, and they had certain cases that were opened, and I've got some friends that went and did that.
Oh,
And every once in a while, there will be someone found and brought back. So when I was standing here last year, and you guys had those 7 flags out there and some information about the individual ones, read the names and stuff for each one, and I was like, wow, it'd be something if all the way down to that number 7 could go down to 0, and to be able to be here to witness it, it'd be pretty cool.
And we never left anybody behind. I mean, I remember, even the February 6th battle, we couldn't find Kilbane, and I mean, we weren't going to leave until we found him.
Yep.
I mean, he was dead, but.
And there's a lot of lives that have been lost because of that, but they do it willingly. I mean, you're not going to leave somebody behind.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. I've been reading a bunch of books as well lately, and just the stories of that, where how many people are lost when they're trying to get one person out, dead or alive.
Yeah.
That friend of mine that I pulled out of that water, he never had a chance.
Mm-hmm.
If I wouldn't have seen that
helmet
steel pot sticking out of the water,
probably looked like a turtle.
well, it was just barely the top.
And you got him when he's still holding his breath because you didn't see bubbles around it.
Yeah, I picked him up. I grabbed hold of him like this and pulled him up out of that water, and he come up cussing. And then I went to see him. I think it was probably early 2000s or late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And we were sitting there in his house visiting, and he says to me, he says, "Do you remember who pulled me up out of that water that time?"
Oh, wow.
And he did.
And I said, "That was me." And he said, "You?" And I said, "Yeah, and I told him exactly how it happened or whatever. And I got thinking, how much chaos is there that you're underneath water and you have no idea what you're going to do? You're drowning.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy pulls you out of there that you know well, and you can't remember who it was.
Yep. Little trauma to the
where
brain
was
there.
his mind at?
Yeah.
I mean, he instantly pulled up out of there, and he went from dead to alive and anger, and on we went. But he did not know that was me.
Yeah, I believe it. A lot of stress.
And had he not, he'd be missing in action. We'd have never known where he was.
Yeah, good point.
He was under 5 feet of water. If he couldn't have got that breath of air. And another time, we were at a water point.
Oh, yeah, Nelson.
Yeah. And we didn't have to pull guard. They had this guy had brought these 3 prostitutes out on his Honda 90. And we're out there, and I don't know why we were there, but it was a water point. And
But it was secure.
Yeah, it was secure. We didn't have to pull any guard for this
guard
afternoon. Probably the only afternoon I can remember that we didn't have to pull guard. Anyway, and secure the area. But anyway, this one guy, it was beautiful sunshine, and we're laying there in this grassy knob, and there's this lake down there about 15 feet and crystal clear. And the one guy says, I'm going to take my clothes off and go swimming. So he did, and well, we all jumped up and takes our clothes off and go swimming, bailing off this cliff. And I'm sitting out, I jump in and come up, and I'm bobbing around out there or whatever, and here comes Nelson, and he says, if I don't come up, come and get me. And jumps in. What did he say that for? And so I watched him, and he came up, and the top of his head and his arm came out of the water. And he went down. And the next thing he comes up, and his hand comes out of the water. And he went down. And I thought, he either can't swim and he's drowning, or he's one hell of an actor.
Yeah.
And his fingertips come out of the water, and down they went. Well, I dived down. It was clear water. I could see him. And I swam down there to the bottom and got a hold of his legs and shoved him to the top. And then this other guy come along, and Bob Mulford come along and helped me drag him to a rock. And he's sitting there coughing and spitting and everything. Yeah. I said, don't you know how to swim? And he says, no.
Oh, my God.
And I says, what in the world did you jump off there for? He says, it looked like so much fun.
Oh, my word.
But that's another one. If I wouldn't, he was done. He was drowned.
Oh, yeah.
He was drowned. If I hadn't dived down there and got him, there wouldn't have been anybody knowing where he was.
Right.
They'd have seen his empty clothes up there.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Things people do.
Yeah.
Were you getting some of that laughter back that we talked about a while ago?
Yeah. Yeah, some of them things were pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
They were pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but he died of a heart attack at 47.
Really?
And his wife thinks it was Agent Orange.
Well, it probably was.
But I don't know if she ever got anything.
If she
out
ever
of it.
filed?
I don't know.
But she could still file and be on that death certificate, heart issue. I mean, she'd still be eligible.
I don't know what's on the dart. All I know is he had a heart attack and knocked him right off he was on a little small cot, sleeping downstairs. 47.
Man. Yeah. Don't be afraid of making claims. Get down to the VA.
Yeah.
They're wanting to help the people that we know down here.
This is one of the top ones.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember when I was doing stuff when I was still in. I was in that office area, and there was stacks of boxes, and I asked the dude what that was all about, and our office people were so good that they were shipping them in from other states to help them get caught up on claims and things.
Yeah.
And I've done stuff down at the VA hospital here. I'm actually going for my annual physical again tomorrow morning, actually.
Oh, okay.
And I've got no complaints about the VA down here. I've heard nothing but good things about this one in particular. There's always work to be done, especially nationally. But I feel very blessed to have the one that we have in Sioux Falls.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you guys want to touch on at all? This has been fun. I knew it would be.
Well, we'd invite, all Vietnam era vets to the event March 28th, and that's going to start around 10 o'clock. There will be a lunch, and it'll probably wrap up about 2. We invite them to bring any memorabilia from, pictures to different things that they picked up in the war. Again, we don't want any helicopters. I guess you could probably land them on the south lawn.
Yeah.
And but again, we will have speakers from the VA, and we probably have people, if they want to file a claim that day, available. So
right. Yeah, and when I left here, I met some people that I knew from my past when I was here last time, and got the invite down to Lenox, South Dakota. So by 2:30, I was down there at another one.
Oh, you were?
Down
Okay.
there, and yeah, talked to a few people about doing this as well too.
Uh-huh.
So I think I've got one of those coming up from a guy I met there.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like I said, last year was my first time being here, and I'm going to continue coming.
Okay,
so
yeah, the 28th, you're more than welcome, Jim.
I'll spread the word.
Yeah.
So
You did.
I think the service clubs are the strongest I've ever seen them. They are now, you know, and I think it's because of the word spread of, you know, about how veterans should be treated. And,
Yeah. When they passed like the PAC Act,
yes,
there was a whole bunch of stuff there that would make many eligible. I mean, many that weren't eligible prior, eligible now.
yeah, they're trying to get the word out that whether you tried or not before, try again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
so that's good
Yeah.
because it's, you know, it just is. It's growing.
Yeah.
It's growing where everything used to be shrinking.
Yeah.
Now it's growing.
Mm-hmm. That's good to hear because I wasn't sure how that status was. Because it seems like, you know, volunteerism and stuff like that has been declining, but maybe those memberships are growing now.
Well, there's not very many that serve in the military now. I think it's like less than 1%
1%. Yeah.
of the population. So
Right.
when you look, that's a small number. You spread that across
Yeah.
for people to be involved, and so there's not as so they, you know, it's really more meaningful that they're growing.
Right.
And now I've never heard of Warriors Never Give Up. That's a new organization.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even the new one that you were mentioning.
Hero Haven.
Yeah, Hero
Right.
Haven. That was on TV this weekend, and I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I think they do hunts and
Yeah.
fishing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to contact a couple other guys and see what else
They
do.
Yeah, because I know like PVA does a big fishing event with South Dakota firemen every the weekend. Well, it's a Thursday, Friday before Memorial Day on the river, and they provide all the boats. And this last year, I think it was 51 boats.
Nice.
You know, and it's usually 2 firemen and 1 disabled vet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they lift the guys in the electric wheelchairs with a forklift from the parking lot right into the boat.
Right into the boat. There
Yeah,
you go.
And then they put the boat in the water, and I've been out. I think we've had 20 of them, and I don't think I've missed one.
That's good. It's got to feel great to get out on that water.
Yeah, it did.
Cool. Well, is there anything else you'd like to close with?
Well,
Okay.
No, just thank you, Jim, for doing this. Or
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet. No problem. And he was gonna let people know around here.
Oh,
I
did-
gave him the card. You know how to see
Okay.
this on YouTube and
Okay.
or whatever. But
And you said it'd be out February
21st,
26th or 20.
I think. Let me do a quick look here. 21st.
Okay.
February 21st. Yep. So thanks a lot. This has been fun. I'm looking forward to March 28th even more so now. And
Okay.
I'm going
super.
to keep reading more of the stories
Yeah,
in
you
here
think
and at least get one more of the signatures. I'll probably go through the names with you when we're done here and
Oh, okay.
just see if there's anybody else that you know of that
Yeah.
that does come on occasion and
Yeah.
get a chance to talk to them
I've
and get their
read it
signatures.
twice.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
big read.
The thing is the second time is way better than the first
First time.
Yeah, because you know you can't memorize that, but as you read it the second time, you remember that from the
details.
first time, and then you remember more about it, and it really is a phenomenal book.
Mm-hmm.
You know, old Steve did a great job.
Oh, yeah. But I do remember he says his first deal was he was going to interview, I think it was 6 Vietnam vets and get a book out quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 years later, interviewing 31. And then there was us as a committee of 5 of us or 6 of us. You got to raise $35,000 to put the first 1,000 out.
Right.
And then all the money was going to go to the veterans organizations that helped us put the first one out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then all of a sudden And we were selling them just by word of mouth, and all of a sudden they're selling, let's market these, Murph. And I said, you only got about 300 left in inventory. So what if you get orders for 500?
Exactly.
Well, and so we took the profit and bought another 15,000, and they were cheaper. Now I think we only got about 500 left. So we've
I was
sold.
wondering about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I definitely tell people about this.
And just, yeah, because we got people here that stop in, and cause we got them in the conference room. And they said, hey, do you got that book? Yep, we got it right here available.
Yeah, you and I were talking before we started here.
Yeah.
My very first podcast was General Steve doing and his son, Lieutenant Colonel Jeremy doing.
Okay.
And Steve would come in and
Yeah.
ask you about one of these, and then
Yeah.
you guys had a long conversation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's fun to hear. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot, gentlemen. I think we'll just pull a close to this.
Okay, thank
And,
you.
I'm sure we'll be visiting again.
Thank you.
So, you bet. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.